Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Startup Central right here on ET Now with me, Sumita Kareer. If it's anything to do with technology, startups, the new economy, it's all happening right here on ET Now on Startup Central. So do tune into the show every Monday at 7 p.m. on ET Now. So today on the show, we're going to be putting the spotlight on big tech companies and, of course, the government's crackdown on big tech companies. It all started, we do know, last week with WhatsApp's username feature. The government summoned the company, the government issued a notice to the company, and of course, after having a meeting with the company, now we're given to understand from sources that WhatsApp has asked for more time as far as the impersonation feature is, I beg your pardon, the username feature is concerned. Now, WhatsApp says that it has privacy mechanisms to ensure that there is no impersonation, there are no scams and spam or digital frauds that are involved with respect to this particular feature, while the government is very concerned that this could lead to impersonation on a large scale. It could lead to digital thefts as well. That was one company in focus. Then, of course, Meta was also given a notice to explain the sexual content in its ads on Instagram. The company then, of course, responded by stating that we do have mechanisms in place, but it's very difficult to sort of crack down on all bad actors. Then was the case with respect to Telegram and Signal. They have a similar feature called the username feature that's used on WhatsApp. They have a similar feature, and government, of course, sought explanation from them as well. We're waiting for more details and more updates on that aspect. And then, of course, the government also cracked down by ordering the removal of BAT, BMS, Logigy, Epoch, Ion apps. These apps are being misused in battery-operated rickshaws. So, of course, the big question that we're asking today is what really prompted the government to take action against big tech companies all in a span of just a few days. In fact, to discuss the finer points as far as this particular story is concerned, we're now joined by Rohit Kumar. He is, of course, the co-founder of the Quantum Hub. Thank you very much, Rohit, for joining us here on Startup Central.
Thank you so much.
All right, so first things first, Rohit, let's begin with the very basics first. What really prompted the government to take action on a bevy of apps, all within a matter of a week?
I think it's a bit coincidental in some ways. There are a bunch of features that were rolled out. Of course, the username feature got rolled out, then the Instagram ads thing, but these are not things that were timed together. It just so happened. But I think what specifically with regard to the WhatsApp thing and then subsequent notices that went to Telegram and Signal, it's obviously triggered by the fact that WhatsApp has a huge user base in India. From what I understand, over 850 million users. It's the primary way in which India communicates with each other. And it's almost 1/3 of WhatsApp's global base that is in India. And so this is a very significant shift in how users are used to the platform and what kind of trusted signals they see on the platform. So I think when WhatsApp announced that change, and understandably from the company's point of view, it's business as usual. They are trying to introduce new features, make the product better in some ways. But the scale of this change is such that the government has become very worried that what is likely to happen, especially given the spam ecosystem in India. I feel that notices to Telegram and Signal were sent because the government was asked this question, that these guys have had this feature for much longer. From what I understand, Signal has had it since 2024 and Telegram even before, probably from 2014. But the user base of these platforms is much smaller. So when WhatsApp came under scrutiny, it was an obvious question to ask that other platforms that offer similar features, why have they not been asked the same question? And therefore, the notice was sort of extended to them. But I feel that some of the concerns that the government is raising are genuine and they need to be sort of thought through given the scale of the app.
Absolutely. Right, absolutely. And of course, this is coming in at a very crucial time when we are seeing developments happen in AI. And of course, that is leading to far greater implications related to cybersecurity as well. But the question that needs to be asked, Rohit, is something that you also stated. You said that, this is a privacy feature and something that WhatsApp also claims that this is going to lead to better privacy for individuals, for its users here in India, India being one of the largest markets for WhatsApp. across the globe. But what needs to be asked is, why did WhatsApp really need to sort of roll out this feature, or at least introduce this feature? They're saying that the feature is not going to be rolled out without prior consultation, and it is likely to be rolled out later this year globally. But what is the company's strategy behind launching this new feature? Because the priority at the moment for WhatsApp should be cracking down on spam, cracking down on impersonation, cracking down on all sorts of misleading activities that happen on the app.
No, but this is not to say that both things can't happen in parallel. And there is an argument to be made that our mobile numbers are the primary identifier that we use across a lot of different, documentation channels, etc. Even Aadhaar, all the other, even with the PAN card and, stuff like that. So therefore, when you share your number, you do expose it to sort of different actors. So this argument is fair that, if possible, you can avoid sharing your number only because you want to communicate with someone, and that is going to prevent the misuse of that number in other contexts. Having said that, there is a lot of spam, scam, etc. that's starting to happen on WhatsApp as well. This is not to say that just by changing this feature, WhatsApp will be able to reduce those. Both need to happen in parallel. I think, but the government's concern is also fair. Like, for instance, WhatsApp has sort of issued several clarifications that this is an opt-in feature. You could, set up a user PIN where people would only be able to communicate with you if you share that PIN with you. It's not a searchable directory, etc. Having said that, we also know how social engineering works, right? It's not that scamsters are not going to try and find ways around it. For instance, today, if you get a message from a +91, some mobile number saying that this is related to an income tax refund, you may think twice. But now if you get it from a @income tax refund, you may sort of trust it. And in a low literacy environment, there is a big risk. So I think there are arguments to be made on both sides. WhatsApp's intent is perhaps fair, but government's question is also fair, that have you built in enough safeguards to make sure that this will not backfire, especially given the scale at which you are operating in the country?
All right, Rohit, we did lose your audio at that point in time, but let me ask you the question once again. When it comes to WhatsApp's, feature, the username feature, there's been a lot of controversy around it, but the company says that this is going to lead to increasing privacy. But at this point in time, do you think that should be the priority of the company? Is that something that the company should essentially be looking at, given the fact that it's not been able to completely resolve the problem of spam calls on its app? And of course, we do see sometimes that we do get added to groups without our consent being sought.
But, this is not to say that both can't happen in parallel. This is not necessarily meant to be a sequential activity that you solve one and you address another. Privacy is an important concern, but reducing spam, etc. is also an important sort of concern, but both can happen in parallel. In fact, one may argue that if your mobile number is not shared with multiple people, people may not be able to add you into groups. So I feel that I wouldn't want to question how Meta is prioritizing its own business. That is up to it to decide what to run and what not to run. It is also depends on what it is hearing from its users and customers. But I do agree that when you are rolling out a feature at this scale, and there is concern that there could be social engineering and people could misuse that feature, then there is a need to do a risk assessment and understand whether we have built in enough safeguards to make sure that this doesn't backfire.
In fact, one thing that the government has asked of the company is that, and this is according to sources again, that WhatsApp did not really consult properly with stakeholders before rolling out this feature. At the juncture where we stand, given the fact that WhatsApp operates globally, is it feasible for companies to consult with stakeholders before rolling out these features? Because the second aspect of this very story is the fact that there is geopolitics at play as well. You can't really divorce technology from geoeconomics and geopolitics, wherein we're seeing in many countries wherein the state is playing an active role in how big techs operate.
No, that's a fair point. Having said that, I wouldn't be able to comment on whether WhatsApp did consult a lot of different stakeholders. I do want to say that currently our legislative framework does not lend transparency to that kind of consultation. That is a problem. For instance, in the EU, and I can talk more about this later, that we've moved away towards what are called duty of care approaches. There is a recognition that platforms are no longer simple conduits of information. They're no longer, they are intermediaries, but the way they design their platforms shapes user behavior, shapes the kind of risks that users get susceptible to. So therefore, in some of the jurisdictions like EU, there is a requirement of a risk assessment that the platform must undertake and submit to the regulator to say what are its different features, what are the kind of complaints it is getting on its platform, and whether it has done enough due diligence and safeguards to mitigate those risks. So I feel that I am sure, though, for a company at the size of Meta and the kind of user base, nothing would have been rolled out without some kind of user testing. Whether it was adequate is a question that only the regulator can answer when it sort of has a consultation with them. Having said that, I don't think it's good practice to get companies to check in with a regulator before launching a new product, because if you extend that idea to all of different tech interfaces out there, how many times should people check? When should they check? It'll become a bottleneck. It'll become, and the speed of innovation that India also wants to see, we don't want to sort of stop our businesses like that.
Absolutely, Rohit. So the question then is, what can governments do? Because, of course, you can't really stop companies from coming out with their features, coming up with the new business models. At the same time, you have to keep the digital safety of users as your primary motive. That has to be primary. So how can a balance really be struck? Do we need a change in our regulations? Do we need a change in the IT Act in the way that it exists now?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the problems with the current IT Act, it is just the main power that the government has is blocking and takedown. And, it does prescribe some due diligence requirement on platforms, but they're largely content and grievance related, right? Which basically means that there is currently no power under the law to stop a feature rollout. Of course, the government has issued a notice to Meta, but that will eventually have to be tested in court where there is solid legal ground to do that. But what does this call? This example, the neat example that had happened earlier where Telegram was sort of blocked for a while, shows that our legislation is out of date. What we really need to do is go back and say that how can I create a predictable regulatory environment while allowing innovation but reducing risks? And the way to do that is to build in a cadence of risk assessments that platforms are required to do based on the features they offer, to then explain to the regulator what measures are they taking to safeguard users. And if in those risk assessment, it turns out that some features are likely to lead to more harm, then the platform must go back and redesign it. So I think this is called a duty of care approach, which moves beyond a simple intermediary liability kind of approach that we currently have.
Right.
Some of the jurisdictions have already adopted it. It's time for India to actually relook at its legislation and do that.
Absolutely, and we'll have to wait and see whether that's the priority of the government at the moment or not. But, speaking of legal provisions, are there legal provisions that are available to the government to sort of halt the rollout of, WhatsApp's username feature or maybe other such features by companies? Because there are some privacy experts who've been saying that this sort of is not really within the purview of what the legal statutes offer to the government.
Absolutely. So the government's take is that this falls under the due diligence requirements under the Information Technology Act. Having said that, if you read the provisions more closely, the due diligence requirements are related to what kind of content the users are uploading and what kind of grievance redressal systems the government, the platform is offering to its users, and whether it responds to government's takedown notices and blocking requests. There is currently no explicit provision around feature rollout or the need for companies to take prior approval on future rollouts. So while the government has issued a notice and WhatsApp has gone and met it, if there is tomorrow, and I don't know what is the approach that WhatsApp will take, but I feel that currently the legal standing on which this is happening is not very clear. It is definitely shaky. But having said that, the concern that the government has is legitimate, but whether the law currently allows it to do it is a separate question. And I don't think it does at the moment.
Absolutely. Just one final question, Rohit, before we let you go, and this is on the matter of CSAM child sexual exploitation with respect to the notice that was given by India's IT ministry to Meta. And of course, we do know that Meta has responded to that notice, and in a statement, it has said, and let me quote what they've said. It says that we use advanced AI technology to proactively detect violating content and individuals, but we are in a constant battle with criminals who hide amongst our 3.5 billion users, and they try to evade our detection. Is that justification enough, especially when it is the safety of minors that is in question?
No, I mean, it's not, I'm not sure it's a fully okay justification. The problem, however, is they are right on the scale, that, the scale is very high. But as compared to other content, ads are also different in the sense that ads undergo more proactive moderation before they are sort of let out. And from what I understand from the BBC documentary, that was kind of made, they did flag some of these issues. I think the issue may be what kind of automated moderation versus what kind of manual moderation is being sort of deployed. And if there is a need for more closer moderation, especially when somebody is flagging something to you. From what I understand, there were ads which led people onto certain kinds of Telegram groups where, a lot of this content is being showcased, but the ad in itself was not, explicitly violating the guidelines, and therefore it was let on. But I do feel that this calls for Meta and all other platforms in the ecosystem to step back and see that are they doing enough to be able to moderate some of these things, because the societal risks are too high. And, the government needs to work with these platforms to say that what kind of moderation is expected of them and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
Absolutely, Rohit, and that remains to be seen how Meta sort of reacts to this particular piece of information, because it is not just about the platform, it's not just about users, but it is about user safety. And when we talk about user safety, the safety of minors, that is in question here. So this is, of course, a very, very serious issue that needs to be looked at. But for the moment, thank you very much for taking the time out and speaking to us here on Startup Central. Appreciate your views and perspectives on the matter.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to slip into a very short commercial break. Coming up next on Startup Central, while we take a deep dive into all that's happening as far as the job market in IT and tech sector is concerned. That and much more is coming up. You don't go anywhere, and keep watching Startup Central.